headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Today we're going to have President Zelenskyy of Ukraine addressing UK Parliament. We know once again he's going to talk about a no-fly zone and getting more help for the Ukrainian people. What more, realistically, can we and will we actually do?
Well, we can not only continue but step up both lethal aid and non-lethal aid to help the Ukrainians defend themselves and fight the Russian invasion. And we've seen, a step change in the last week. Countries who'd never given lethal aid now giving lethal aid. We're into the thousands of anti-tank weapons, thousands of anti-air weapons. I think what we need to do is, see what weapons could be provided as the Russian tactics change. The Russian tactics are now heavy bombardment of artillery surrounding towns at long ranges, and obviously that affects what we could help them with, and I think that's quite important.
The Prime Minister's called the Russian tactics barbaric, opening humanitarian corridors. Another one reopened today, but then shelling the civilians as they use them, offering humanitarian corridors to Russia and Belarus, which it means, frankly, is a joke. What do you make of their tactics? And is there any evidence there that there is a problem with their strategy, with their tactics, with their supply, their logistics? Is there any hope that actually this Russian invasion will not succeed?
Well, first of all, their tactics are completely cynical, and you would have seen the spokesman from the Kremlin yesterday sort of saying, we could stop all this if you just recognise Crimea as Russia, the Donbass, and promise to remain neutral and promise never join the EU and NATO. In other words, we recognise Ukraine to be a state, but not sovereign state, because we'll tell it what to do. Completely cynical, and I think these humanitarian corridors are cynical, which is send your women and children to Russia and Belarus, leave your men in the cities, and then we'll flatten them all. I think that is deeply cynical, but it goes to the heart of their sort of arrogance, and I think why they're in a mess they're in, which is they made this assumption that the Ukrainians would greet them as liberators. When they didn't get that, their army sort of floundered, and what we've seen is an army stuck. We've seen that armoured column that you and I talked about a few days ago. It's still there, probably empty of fuel, probably empty of rations, probably most of the soldiers have run away and being damaged most days. We've seen their armies encircling but not really being able to occupy cities. And I think what's dawning on the Kremlin is, first of all, that they are responsible for the deaths of thousands of Russian soldiers, let alone innocent civilians in Ukraine, that the invincible army turns out to be pretty hollow, either because of corruption or because of bad leadership, and they are paying the price for that. Now, we shouldn't forget, and I'm afraid to be pessimistic, that the Russians have committed an overwhelming number of forces, 160-odd thousand, and Putin's track record is if he doesn't like what he gets, he just doubles down and gets more and more horrific, and I think we should be prepared for that, and that's not a comfort to the Ukrainians. It's why we must do more to protect them. We must more to think about what next we could do on sanctions, and it's why the PM held a conference yesterday with the Prime Minister of Holland and the Prime Minister of Canada about what more we could do on humanitarian aid. But the direction of travel from Putin is going to be bad. He is in a corner, he's laid his own trap, and his army is slowly but surely grinding to a halt.
Well, we're talking about sanctions. The economic crime bill was passed in the House of Commons last night, and the idea is to actually sort of tighten up some of the rules in terms of foreign money being able to just purchase property in companies in this country. We don't know who those people are. It's a way of laundering the cash. But the thing is that is tightening things up. But we've made it very easy for Russian money to be in this country. Extraordinary revelation we had from Tom Keating of the Royal United Service Institute this morning on the show, saying that so far we have given more visas to oligarchs than we have to Ukrainians. And he said that's clearly a disgrace. It is, isn't it?
Well, I think that's comparing entirely two different timelines.
It is. But nevertheless, if you're a rich Russian oligarch, you can have a visa to this country. If you're a Ukrainian fleeing war...
Look, I think we are now in a position where, I brought in the Criminal Finance Act in 2018 when I was Security Minister, and I'm delighted that this bill has come along and put in things that I'd wanted to put in, but the wider sort of institutional resistance or the difficulty, I think, in fact, actually in the House of Lords, our peer amended the bill to give overweight to some of the human rights of these oligarchs rather than give the benefit of the doubt to the law enforcement agencies. And I think that's been removed and hopefully will now have an all-party support. I think when it comes to, we made it too easy, I think everyone would recognise that over the last 20 years, the sort of dash for cash and allowing everyone to come into London without too many checks has produced the wrong people as well as the right people. There are lots of, let's be honest, there are lots of entrepreneurs and law-abiding people and people who fled Putin long before anybody else did, who came to this country because of what we stood for. And, we shouldn't be throwing them all out or anything like that. We should recognise that they add to this country and they have provided wealth and jobs and investment. But you're right, we haven't done the checks we should have done over the last 20 years. I was determined as security minister to try and shut that down, and we're going to do that. But
how many checks should we be making right now? We're told again this figure just 300 refugees that come being granted those visas. We've also got the opening for people to come. They've got the family links. The comparisons with places like Poland taking over 1 million. Look, that's meaningless. Of course, it's on the border. But countries like Ireland and Norway, they've taken more.
Well,
what is stopping us taking more?
So they've chosen not to have a visa or checks. Mm-hmm. That's the significant difference. And so, the Home Secretary, who has the job of balancing the security of the United Kingdom with everything else, but that, everyone, if something happened and Joe Bloggs came in from a country and it turned out they hadn't been checked, or they weren't who they were, we all see how that plays out. I think the key here is to make sure that we speed up the visa processing. The overall offer is one of the most generous in Europe. 200,000 people in the family scheme and unlimited in the humanitarian scheme. That's a lot of people. The question here is make sure they're processed as quickly as possible and as close to the war zone as possible, or indeed as close to the borders. That's the key. In peacetime, everyone does these things through the embassies online. That isn't going to be possible. We need to make sure that we make it as quickly as possible. I know the Home Secretary is determined to speed that up. She'll get all the support she needs from me.
Will she get it from the Foreign Office as well? The word is that actually it's the Foreign Office trying to stop this happening.
I haven't seen any evidence of any of that. All I know is that the determination to, the overall offer is there, 200,000 and unlimited. The question is now the processing, and we've got to do more. We've got to do better at it.
Okay. Let's talk also about more economic sanctions, what else we can do. The US is considering an oil and gas embargo. Germans and other Europeans are obviously rather unhappy about that, given they get 40% of their gas and 30% of their oil from Russia. There's talk of boycotts, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Burger King, KFC, Pepsi, all of them. Premier League talking about withdrawing their footage. How wide do you think this can go? What would be the crucial difference? What could actually be the thing that makes a difference between Putin winning and losing?
Well, I'm not sure much is going to make a difference to Putin. I think he has vast amounts of his own wealth, and he obviously spends lots of time in his very large villa in Sochi as well. So I'm not entirely sure a man who has ignored all advice from the West, not just the West actually, by the international community, who was warned, who was asked, people, the amount of hours people spent on the telephone to him in the lead up to this, a man who believes in his destiny and believes that this is his legacy, and believes that the Ukrainians really are Russia and they just want him to come along and they'd welcome him. I'm not sure exactly how directly he would be deterred, but overall the economic cost, first of all, he's reduced his country to having worse sanctions. I think he's the most sanctioned country in the world now. That's going to seriously damage his economy. I think that there are more places to go. Obviously, as you say, in the United States, we look to oil and gas. Britain is in a fairly unique position that we rely on. I think we have about 2 or 3% of their gas and oil, so it makes no odds really to us. And we can produce more oil and gas from the North Sea. So I think in one sense, Britain is in a position. I think there has to be some reserve insofar as the international community has to leave some sanctions on the table to say, if you go even more extreme or if you do something even more catastrophic, we will completely, we have something to play. If you play all your cards in the first hand, you're unlikely to make a change. So I think we have those under review. We'll keep doing so. Okay. We're determined to make sure that he fails in Ukraine.
And do you think he will fail? Just finally, I know you have to go, but is Putin going to win or lose at the end of the day?
He's lost already. Now, whether he loses in Ukraine or whether he loses in the long run, he's done. He's a spent force. I mean, what he has done is gone against international norms, international community. He is responsible for not only the deaths of thousands, potentially, of Ukrainians, but he's responsible for the deaths of thousands of his own soldiers. He's broken every rule in the book. He's crashed his own economy. It is unlikely that anyone in the international community really will take his phone calls. Maybe Kim Jong-un in North Korea, good luck to him. But that is about it. He is a spent force in the world. And if his ambition was to be a great czar that influenced Russia, and and projected Russia across the world, he has fundamentally failed. I don't think that he will ever recover from this. Now, whether that is in the next year or whether it's the next 10, I don't know. And I hope that the suffering stops in Ukraine, but he's done.
Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed.